Hi guys, welcome back to the second part of our Postman clone tutorial series. In this version, or in this video, we're going to style some of the work we did in the last video. If you're new to this series, go ahead and watch the first part, or you can just watch the second part. It doesn't matter to me. But hopefully this video will be useful. To start things off, let's go ahead and log in. I should have already done this, but it's okay. Let me start this project. Hopefully you don't hear the people in the background talking. My wife has some friends over right now. Okay. So if you remember, we left off last time with this sort of structure. We have an embedded folder with a view there and a main folder with another view, request and requests. So this view here we're going to work on today, and then will be an embedded view which will have multiple of the request views eventually. So today we're going to work on trying to style this view here and make it look nicer, make it look more like our Adobe XD drawing, which I will open right now. For some reason I need to log back in. Okay, so here's a markup of the page we're going to be working on. Ignore this header and the side nav. We won't focus on that too much. So in this video we're going to work on this portion here from this corner down to this corner. You can see that this part, the tab, will be our requests view, this embedded view with the tab container, this one here, and then the singular request will be what we will actually style today. So let's go ahead and add, first things first, on the root container, let's add padding. I don't like how it hugs the side there. We can add top and bottom, 10 pixels top and bottom, and then 20 pixels side to side. I'm gonna launch this view actually so I can see what it looks like in an actual session. Okay, so it already looks better with some padding top and bottom. Let's go back to the designer here. If I sound a little sick, it's because I've been having a cold or a sore throat for the past few days. Okay, let's make this label here. I don't like how big the text is. Let's do font size 14 pixels, something smaller. I'm just going to style these components out of order. So whatever I think needs to be styled next, that's what we'll work on. So I also don't like how the drop down here and this text field aren't equal height. I might have OCD. Okay, let's set a height here to maybe 28 pixels and set shrink to none, so it doesn't shrink here. Same thing with this. Let's set this to 28 pixels as well. Okay, that looks better already. And then let's click on our flex top. On the flex method, let's add margin to the right. That way it'll separate this HTTP method section from the URL section. So you can do this by adding margin right. Let's try 10 pixels, something like that. And then flex URL, let's do the same thing. So it adds some margin between the button and the text area, this flex here. Okay. Oh, I also want to change the default text or the default font family. So you can do that at any level here. If you change it for flex top, if you set the font family, it'll only apply to any element that's inside this flex top. But since we want it to apply to all of the elements, let's actually add it to root here. Let's add a font family. Familia, Roboto, and then if that one isn't available, we can add sans serif. There we go. It looks better already, in my opinion. Okay, let's add. So if you look, I'm using the Adobe design loosely, the Adobe design guidelines, and they have a recommendation on how you should round the corners on elements. I believe it's a 4 pixel. So let's do, you'll see what I mean here. Border radius, I believe. Radius 4 pixels. That'll make it look more Adobe-like. Adobe Spectrum, sorry, not Adobe. Border radius 4 pixels. Okay, that looks better already. Let's save this and look at it in the session. There we go. That looks a lot better, in my opinion. Just adding some padding and some margin. I always find that that's one of the easiest things to add to a project to make it look nicer. It's just to add some padding, some spacing between your elements. Okay, so next let's style this button. You can see when you click it, there's a blue outline here that's kind of hard to see right now, and there's also a drop shadow. I also don't like the color, so let's go ahead and style this button next to look more like this here. So it'll be rounded here. It'll have rounded edges, and it'll be a different color. So let's go to colors here and see which color. I like this green 400. There's probably a specific way Adobe Spectrum recommends using colors, but I'll just copy this color here. If you go to spectrum.adobe.com, you don't need a login for this. So you should be able to just go to this page and see these colors here. I'll link the page in the description. Okay, so first things first, let's change the background color. That's the most obvious one. Background color, and set this to our value here. Let's also set the height to 28 pixels, just so it matches up with our text field here and the drop down. Can I do this? I don't know if this will work. Align self, I want it to go to flex end. There we go. That actually worked. Let's see if they line up. So let me look at this in the browser. Okay, it looks like they line up, and you can see the drop shadow here that I was talking about earlier. But it does look like, if we zoom in, okay, I think they line up there on the bottom. So now let's remove the outline. Outline, set it to none, and then box shadow, set this to none as well. So if you save and go back to your session, you shouldn't see the box shadow, so it looks normal. Besides the cursor still changes, so you know that you're interacting with the button. Okay, and then the last thing we want to do, let's set border radius to, well, we want it rounded like the Adobe Spectrum button. 10 pixels, let's try that. I don't think that's enough. That's still a straight portion there. I believe the button has a height of 28 pixels, so let's try 14 pixels. Should be halfway. Okay, and let's save. Okay, and go back here, and that looks a lot better already. All right, so we have the flex top looking a lot better. Let's work on this middle section here. The first thing I want to do is add some margin. So you can either do margin bottom on flex top. I think I'll do that. So let me add margin bottom. Let's go 20 pixels. Okay, that looks fine. And then we'll add margin bottom as well. So this response here is is lower. Okay, let's also, just to be consistent, change the font size of this label here. Size 14 pixels. There we go, it's a little smaller. We'll work on this later here. So let's go to flex params, and the tab container, I want to move the params. So this tab section, I want to move it a little bit farther away from the actual table, the tab contents. So there should be a content style, I believe we can add. So let's first apply it here, margin bottom. I don't know where this margin will appear. Okay, so we don't need it there. If we need margin top. Okay, that's the incorrect location. I think we want it here. Margin top 10 pixels. There we go, that looks better. But there is this scroll bar here that I don't like. Container. So let's actually remove that because there's a scroll bar, and I just need to figure out why it's there. But we'll do that another time. I think it won't be necessary actually, because I thought of this fix here. Let's disable the header, and also disable the pager there at the bottom. There we go. So that looks better already. I'm going to remove some of the data here. So I'll skip through this so you don't have to watch me do this. Let me actually copy this. Let me add a data property back. Where's data? Oh. Delete. Data. Change to array. And then add value and paste here. There we go. And then let me add another object. Copy. Paste. Add another object, and then paste over the top of this. So we have a smaller table. We don't have scroll bars there. And then let me actually copy this table params, copy it, and paste it on here. That way when we switch, paste. Let's see if that does anything. I won't worry too much about this section. It's going to take some more work because we're going to have these rows to be editable. I don't know why I can't speak today, but well, specifically we're going to have cells editable on double click. So if you go here on the table, there's an option here. Cells allow edit on double click or single click or long press, but this actually requires you to add an event. So here on edit cell commit, it requires some additional events. So we won't work on that in this video. So I'll leave this middle section as it is. Let's look at it in the session. It looks better already, but before we finish this project, we'll have these cells be editable. So you can double click and then add your, so if you If you've ever used Postman, let me show you here. Let me make sure it's okay. This is the table we're trying to replicate, where you can add key value pairs. So hello world, and it actually modifies your URL. And then for the headers, it's the same thing. You have HTTP headers you add here, and parameters, it's the same thing. And then I want to have a button to enable and disable the params, the URL parameters. So this is what we're trying to replicate. Hopefully we can get something close. Okay, so for this video, I think we worked on everything. Let me actually main requests. Okay, so let me actually duplicate this here and then open up. There we go. So we have our request. This is one of them. As you can see in the Postman here, you can open new tabs. We're going to have the same functionality, and then it opens up the exact same page, the exact same starting point, where you choose your method, enter the URL, and then you can run the send and run the request. But for this video, I think the last thing we'll do here, or one of the last things we'll do, is actually implement one of the methods. So let's add some HTTP methods, and actually what will dictate that is, let me open the documentation here. Go to your designer, make sure it's in focus, just click the top bar, hit F1, it'll open documentation, and let's search system.net. Some of you ask in the comments how I know these functions, which ones to use. I just read the documentation. So actually, if you do I forgot how you search for it, system functions, there's a list. It'll show you this list here, and just reading through, if you're starting out, just reading through, some of these sections aren't that useful to me anyways, like Bachnet, it's not that useful. I'm pretty sure I even butchered the pronunciation, but if you just read through these and kind of memorize them, not memorize, but just know that they're there, whenever you're going to be working with data sets, for example, you'll remember that there's an add column, or you'll think there might be an add column, and then you know where to look. Same thing with system.net. So there's system perspective. You can see all the functions associated with it. And the one I'm looking for right now, though, is system.net here. So there are two ways we can actually send our requests. This will be something we will get into in the future. We can create an HTTP client and then pass in the method, or we have get, post, put, and delete HTTP methods, special functions for these. So I don't know which way I'm going to go first. So if you go open up HTTP client, you can pass in here. You pass in a method here somewhere. So it provides a generic object HTTP client, and then you call, so methods here. There's a lot more methods, and it more closely replicates here, the Postman one. But I think the most common ones by far are get, post, put, and delete. So I'll probably just have those four. Let me add those options here. Let's actually add them. And request here in our dropdown, let's add them as options. Label will be get, and I think value, value will be get, label will be get. I'm not sure what we'll use as values. For now, I'll just leave them the same. If we need to modify that in the future, we will do that in the future. It's not a big deal. And then let's have a post, and then we can have put, and the last one here, let's do delete. Okay, so now we have our functions, and let's actually default, just like Postman does, let's default to a get method, and let's Instead of our placeholder text, we can just add get, and value can be get. So it'll start out with having get selected, the get method selected, just like so. I also want to remove the outline here on these components. I don't like how there's a blue line here. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a blue outline, and it's not even a perfect outline either. So let me remove it on these components. I know I'm getting sidetracked here, but outline none, I think that should do it. And same thing here. Let me add a different style. Okay. Hopefully that fixed it. If not, I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, that looks a lot better in my opinion. So let's actually implement one of these methods for the last thing we want to do today. By the end of this video, we will have actually implemented the get method very loosely. There's going to be no testing, just to show how it's going to function. Also, these parameters, none of this will work yet, but this response will actually show the response that we will get back. So there's a list of APIs online. I found this curated list here. Public APIs, just a list of public APIs you can use. And let me go to entertainment, just because they don't require authentication. It's a very simple API resource. So for example, if we do chucknorris.io, it'll tell us here. It'll give us an endpoint here for our URL that we can test. So we're going, obviously right now it does nothing. If we go to requests here and add our request, it doesn't do anything when we hit the send button because there's no event, there's nothing happening on the send button click. So let's go ahead and add that now. Like I said, this will not be extensively tested. It'll assume, for example, that the get method here is selected. So let's add a script. We're going to obviously change that by the end. Hopefully it'll be a bit more tested, a bit more fault tolerant than it will be right now. So the first thing we want to get, or one of the things we want to get, is the URL. And because our Flex containers and our components are pretty well labeled, it's easy to find that. So let's go. I went to Flex URL here, this Flex container, drill down into the text field, and then props text. So this will hold the text that's in this URL here. We can set method will be get. This eventually will be whatever value here is selected in the dropdown, and then we can say response is equal to system.net.http get, and then we pass in our URL here. So let's actually test this beforehand. There's a script console. This is pretty handy. Let's type in the same thing. So URL, we'll hard code this. Here you go. Hopefully you can see this. There we go. I always forget to zoom in. People tell me this all the time. Okay, and then let's do response is equal to system.net.http get URL, and then we can print the response. Print response and see what it returns. Okay, and it returns an object here, and what we want is this value, so we can drill down and just say value. We just want the joke. Okay, so there's probably a structure. Unicode object has no attribute value, so categories is this. Icon URL, ID, updated at, URL, value. Okay, so we might have to use our different notation. Let's see if we can Unicode indices must be integers. Oh, I don't think it's... Okay. So we need to, I think why this is happening is because it's a string instead of a JSON object. Yeah. So there's a function to convert a string to a JSON object. I believe it's to JSON or something. JSON format. Okay, somewhere in the documentation there will be JSON functions, JSON get. Okay, this is the function I'm looking for. System util JSON decode. Okay, so it's a JSON string, and it'll be decoded into a Python object. So let's do this now, and when we print this, it prints a JSON. This is now a JSON object. So if we check the type here, it might still show Unicode. Oh, okay, so it's a dictionary. That's what we want. And now we can do dot value. There we go. Okay, so you need to use, I don't understand why you need to use square brackets sometimes and why dot notation works. It makes more sense to me in JavaScript, but not in the Python. Okay, so here we have the actual joke, and we can just, let's copy this and paste it in our script here. So once again, I know we got sidetracked. We're adding an on action performed event on this button. And so URL will be coming from here. We don't even need this method. It'll just be a get request. And then what we're going to return is, let me copy this again just so I have it. What we're going to return is the joke. But instead of returning it, we're going to, so let me apply this for now, okay? We're going to display it here. We can do this in a few different ways. But what I think I'll do is have, so I want this markdown to display JSON format, and I want to inject, or I want to place my actual source in here. And so what I think I will do is just use an expression here. Okay, I might need a custom property, so let me add a source here. Source will be value. This will be a JSON object, so it'll be something like hello world. There we go. And then inside of our source, so this custom property we'll be setting from the response. So when the response is received, we'll set the custom property on the button script, and then on the source here, let's actually create a binding, expression binding here, and we can concat. We're going to concatenate. So the ticks like this. This is above your tab key on the keyboard. JSON. This tells, and then a new line. This tells Markdown that it's expecting JSON formatted code or script or whatever. And then in between the opening and closing tag, we're going to have our source here. So custom source. And let's hit OK, and then you can see that whatever's in that source will be updated. So then here on our send button, let's open this script again, configure events, and then response, or so we still need to set this. Let's actually get the component we're going to be setting it to. So it's flex response markdown custom source will equal this, the response value, the actual joke. Or we can do, let's create it, put it in an object. That way it's not only the joke, but we can say here joke and then the value. There we go. So this is obviously has no error checking. There's no, if something goes south, we're not going to know from this script, but I think this should work. Let's go ahead and save and test this. So I think this will be the last thing we'll do today. Okay, so let's paste my, let me paste my Chuck Norris jokes, and if this works, it'll appear here, the response. Okay. It does work. There's a formatting issue, as you can see, but I think this will be fine for now. So there we have it. In this video we worked on formatting this top section, middle section, and then actually implementing one of the HTTP methods. So in the next video we're going to continue on. I think we'll work on this middle section and make the rows and the cells editable. But we'll see. So hopefully this still interests you. I think in the very end, when we're done with this project, you'll probably find it on Ignition Exchange. But thank you for watching, and thank you for following along. Hopefully this is enough progress for you. But I'll see you in the next video.